Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Leadership Podcast, a monthly podcast dedicated to teaching highly sensitive people how to step forward as an aspiring sensitive leader so that you can feel confident in your own skin by embracing your natural gifts and strengths as the royal advisor that you are. I am your host, Karina Antonopoulos, coach and mentor for highly sensitive people, and creator of the program, Synchronize Your Life. This is episode 2, What It Really Means to Be an Aspiring Highly Sensitive Leader. Today's guest is a good friend of mine, Linnell Trigolette, an extroverted, highly sensitive leader who joins me in committing her life's work to serving and supporting deep souls who are seeking to regain trust in themselves and the divine. Linnell is a teacher, coach, and retreat facilitator, and is passionate about supporting her clients in discovering new possibilities, even when they've taken all the classes, read all the books, and tried years of counseling. She is deeply compassionate to those who still feel so stuck and at the end of themselves, and who are ready and willing to do the deep soul work to be transformed from the inside out. In Linnell's work, she teaches people who have been mirrored over in responsibility and don't even know it. Through their work with Linnell, they come to experience more freedom, fun, and flow in all aspects of life, and even start to see their lives begin to make a difference in the lives of others. To me, this is a true leader, something we'll talk about more in today's episode. So stay tuned, put everything aside, and let's dive in. Welcome, Linnell. It's so good to have you here joining me in this sacred space for one of our first episodes of the Highly Sensitive Leadership Podcast.
And thank you so very much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be invited to share with your community. I'm honored. Thank you.
Great. So as we dive in, please tell me, what makes a good leader?
So leadership to me really starts with leading myself well. People oftentimes think of someone who's in charge of something as a leader, and yet to me, that's simply just a title you've been given, right? Something that's been given to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good leader. And what makes a really good leader is someone who actually leads themselves well. And when they lead themselves well, then others want to follow. So if you're leading and no one's sort of following, then you're just out taking a walk. Is what I like to say. You just are sort of wearing the title of a leader versus actually being a really good leader. So I think it all starts with really leading yourself well.
I so love that, especially because I'm a firm believer that if we want to create any change in this world, we really need to start with ourselves. So I will just kind of share that I guess growing up, I never really considered myself a leader because I was definitely more of the introverted, highly sensitive person, which definitely started coming out a little bit more on the extroverted side as I got older and more comfortable in my skin. But it seems as I look back that I've actually been put in many leadership positions, even as a kid. So when I was growing up, my dad owned a karate studio and I would go there every week. I had to go twice a week. It was kind of like no questions asked, you have to go. And this is something I definitely fought with my dad about, but now I'm grateful that I went. And after many years of learning from him and learning how to, lead classes, he actually he told me, you have to teach the kids class. So I found myself starting to teach kids classes and then also even some adults, just really facilitating because I knew what needed to be done. And I like to see leadership also as an experienced facilitator. That's a word that came to me as I was thinking about this. So there's that. And then my dad also put me in scenarios with soccer of leading teams that he was training. And then in high school, I played soccer and all 4 years of high school. And by my senior year, soccer was not my forte. It was not my strength, but I played goalie. And so just so happened that if you were goalie, then you're one of the captains because the goalie is the person who's kind of like the bird's eye view of everything and sees the whole field and has to direct everyone where to go. So there I was put in a leadership position. And then in college, I rebelled soccer and karate, and I went the other way and I did cheerleading and kind of maybe to piss my dad off a little bit, but really just because I thought it was just so much fun and I love gymnastics. And again, by the end of my 4 years, I had so much fun that I felt, okay, I'll step up as a leader here and kind of share, because I knew what needed to be done in order to have the facilitator experience, facilitate that experience for everyone. But what I've noticed over the years, which is something I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, Linnell, is I've noticed that in certain leadership positions, it felt really good. In other ones, it felt really, really stressful. And my theory is that if I'm leading a community that is not really aligned with me and who I want to be, I'm just doing it because it needs to be done, then I felt myself turning into someone that I didn't want to be. I felt myself turning into a leader that went based on, oh, I should be like this, so this is what I'm going to do, instead of this is what I really want to do and this is who I am. Maybe you can share first a little bit about your leadership experience, different communities.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. And I actually spent 20 years in middle management leading teams. And I think what was really key to what you just said, in like sometimes it didn't feel like it was the right fit. As a manager, you actually got really clear about what it was that you were all about and what you wanted your team to be about and how that fit into the larger picture of the company's goal and mission. And so then it was really about hiring the people that fit into that sort of what it is that you're looking for, what you're expecting, and clear expectations is a huge part of leading a team well, of facilitating well. I think the times that I've done facilitating of a team or a group outside of the sort of work environment, I've noticed where I don't necessarily actually get to choose like I do in a work setting. I find that, again, clear expectations is a huge, huge part. And that comes back to, if you don't know yourself well and you don't know what's important, you can't set those clear expectations. So that's a huge part of really being a good leader, is really understanding what's really, really important. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to leading yourself well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I do think that for several, I guess the first 20 years of my life, I didn't really fully know who I was. It was just this big experiment trying to figure this out without really putting the pieces together until my mid-20s, I guess. But I think that what I've seen is that as a leader, it's like leadership steps up because there's a community or a group that has similar core values and beliefs. And so when I hear you say, like, getting really clear on who you are and what the expectations are, what the intentions are of that experience, it's really important for everyone to be on the same page. But if we're not, that's where it starts to become like misaligned. And if people, have different agendas or different intentions of why they're there, then it could really throw off the whole flow of the way everything operates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have found that people really want to rise to clear expectations. Yeah, I've seen even some of the most challenging individuals that, given one experience, I'll just use an example of a nephew that I have. We'd like to take our nieces and nephews and do something fun with them every summer. And the one summer, we hadn't really set any expectations. We were just out having fun, and the one nephew was just a mess. And then I thought, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. I have got to change this for next summer. And so I set the really, really clear intentions prior to the start of our time together. And the time was absolutely fantastic. It was brilliant. And the same child who can tend to be very unwieldy, I don't know if that's a great word to use, was just so cooperative and helpful, and not only cooperative, but helpful as well.
Mm.
And again, bring that back to those clear expectations that were set the second time around. And so I think it's important whether you're leading, some nieces and nephews who are dear to you, or whether you're leading a team or you're facilitating, a meeting, expectations, clear expectations and intentions are just so key.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that we're bringing up the word expectation, because it's actually a word I've tried to take out of my vocabulary as much as possible, and why I think we're also using the word intention here. But do you think there's an energetic difference between expectation and intention?
I understand where one could feel that negative energy around expectation. I think for me, growing up, I never had a negative experience around expectations. And so had I think it might have been a negative word for me. And I can see where it would be a negative word for a lot of people. And so I understand where you're coming at with that. And I do think that, intentions can be interchanged for expectations. I think in the corporate setting, a lot of times, you'll hear the word, my expectation. And so I think that's where, for me, it hasn't necessarily been a negative word per se, but I can understand where people could, perceive it as a negative word.
Yeah. So it's definitely in certain situations where expectations are necessary. Of course, at work, you want to know as an employee what your expectations are. Like, okay, tell me what do I need to do? But if it's in a relationship, there are certain things that maybe one partner will have an expectation of the other to do something, but the other person doesn't really, it's not something they want to do. And so there's just that constant battle of this underlying expectation and disappointment and then resentment. So I think that's my experience with expectation in relationships, but I definitely can see what you're saying in the work environment, how expectations are actually really healthy for the whole system that's running. So I'd love to hear maybe a little bit more of like individual experiences you've had, or just anything that pops up to the surface around a challenge that you've had as a leader or a facilitator.
So that's a great question. And I like to say there's two types of not great leaders. I'll use it that way instead of saying bad leaders. Early on, my very first boss in corporate America was this really very demanding, I'm in charge, I'm the boss, I, do what I say, and just this real sort of into the power that they have, and it's just a real sense of listen to me. And so that clearly was like, well, I am not going to be anything like that. So as much as you can learn from bad leaders, I found myself not even being aware of it. But the other type of bad leadership or not so good leadership is the over-responsible leader. And I found myself falling more into this category. And because I am highly sensitive, I could pick up on all kinds of things. I could pick up on all kinds of energy from team members, things going on. And so would fall more into the category of allowing someone to not have to do something because I sense something from them, when really I keep someone from actually growing and maturing when I actually step into over responsibility. And so I think that is every bit as dangerous as the other type, where it's do what I say. And so I fell more in the second category, where for many years wasn't even aware how I was stepping into over responsibility as a leader. You keep yourself as a leader from growing when you do that, and you keep others from really growing as well. So those that you're actually leading, you keep them from growing as well. And so that was a real lesson that I had to really learn, to really step out of that over responsibility, which can tend to be a shadow trait of highly sensitive individuals to begin with. So it makes sense that that would be a shadow trait then of highly sensitive leaders.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have two questions for you to go a little bit deeper on that. So the first question is, why? Can you explain a little bit more with an experience of why it holds people back from growing if you are being over responsible?
Well, I like to say people learn through mistakes. And so if I don't allow someone to make a mistake and I sort of am that plate catcher, so to speak, for the individuals, because, this is going to happen, instead of allowing them to have a thought pattern, make a decision, and be okay with whatever the outcome is, because the learning is far more important for that employee versus getting it right the very first time, right? So that individual is going to actually learn a whole lot more if they actually make a mistake and be a better employee for it the next time around than if we sort of stop it from happening, the mistake from happening, and then they're not really fully learning what they need to learn from that. So mistakes and pain are a great teacher. And it's a great opportunity to then say what didn't work so well and what will we do different next time. And allowing the individual to come to those answers and is just incredibly powerful, because the answers lie within them. But if they don't ever get to make the mistake, then they're not actually getting the opportunity to learn from something.
I so agree. And I so love that. And, we can see this as in the work situation, but we also see this with parenting. We're not going to go into the parenting side of it right now, but another word that we can kind of associate here is enabling, right? And I know for me, one of my shadows that I've also seen many other highly sensitive people that I work with is connected to people pleasing. And so we go into this enabler mode where we try to prevent as many mistakes as possible, because we do want harmony. We do want everything to go well. And, there's no poor intentions behind it, but we have to expand our awareness around, the pain experience of making mistakes so that we can process through around what didn't work, because that's really how we learn. That's exactly what you said. And I really, really appreciate that. Any other follow-up thoughts from there?
Well, I like the idea that you tied it into parenting as well. And I think it can really fall in the over-responsibility, and the enabling can fall into a lot of categories, even with a spouse or significant other, relationships with siblings, that kind of thing. And so while it doesn't necessarily have to be strictly in a leading position, but if you happen to see it in a leading position, then chances are it's showing up in other aspects of your life. And there was a period of time where I was doing that same exact thing with my husband and stepping into every responsibility. And it was when I became aware of it sort of in my leading role that then I could step out of it in my relationship with my spouse too.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're having a challenge in one area and you shift it and you learn how to move through it, then it's going to trickle into the other areas of your life. What I always the way I like to see it is that as a leader or a facilitator, what we're doing is really holding a container for people to be in. And I think when we're in the over responsibility shadow, it's definitely something I've been working through as well. If we're in over responsibility, the way I see it is that I'm creating a perfectionism container. And so that container is actually very small, and there's a very limited space, and it gets very stressful. And there's just this constant need to please and to be perfect, and I'm not enough. But if we expand that container to the mistakes are okay container, then there's more room to breathe. There's more room for play. There's more room for growth. right?
Mm-hmm.
It's trying to fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of people don't feel satisfied in their job, because there's probably like this big circle and we're a star. And there's all these like
Mm-hmm.
missing pieces that are just not fulfilling us. And so, and also sometimes that container is not even big enough for us. So that's why people are constantly changing jobs over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a leader and a facilitator, if we can continue to let that container breathe and grow and expand, then our employees can come with us and they can always grow with us and stick around, and really have a deeper experience instead of one that's more superficial. So another question I had around the over-responsibility shadow is how it's affected you, maybe physically, emotionally, to be constantly working your butt off trying to live in this way.
Very early on, I was managing a costume shop at the time, and we had 3 months to build, design, construct, fit, and alter a large show. And so I found myself working like 7 in the morning till 11 at night, and I had 2 shifts of people coming in, and it's just not sustainable to be in that kind of energy long term. And then the day before we opened, I ended up really just having a nervous breakdown and not being able to work for the next 3 days and missing the opening of the show. And that was my sort of really first wake up to like, oh, this is just like a responsibility. And, certainly there could have been other ways of approaching it. And as I look back now, then I didn't see it that way. But that was my sort of first wake up to things have to be really different. This isn't sustainable. This is in no way sustainable. So it's actually been some physical experiences that have like a nervous breakdown, and then a number of years later I had a seizure. And they were just real wake-up calls to me that something has to be different. And each time put different things in place. But I think what came around the second time was really learning how to let go of a lot and learn to really delegate a lot more and to share responsibility is what came out of the second time around when I had a seizure. So the body never lies about what's going on. So it's always communicating to us. And if, we're not paying attention to the little whispers, then it's the things like the nervous breakdown or the seizure that is the wake up for us then.
And I would say for me that when I really pushed myself so much to do more, for me, probably with all the stress and the anxiety as a kid, I would always get digestive issues. So I'd always come home with a stomach ache. And then later on in college, I started having food sensitivities. So then my actual digestion was not working properly. And then later on, it came in different patterns of how my body was telling me, Karina, you really need to slow down. And so later on, my hormones were imbalanced. And so I think that was also connected to like adrenal fatigue and breaking out with acne and just having stress acne and really, really stressful and not really knowing like what's going on with me. I'm trying to do everything I can. And all I really needed was just to like chill out and not put another thing on my plate and learn how to say no. That was a really, really big challenge for me of, knowing when is the right time to say, I can't do that, or I need help, or that's not working for me. Takes bravery, right? Takes bravery to step out like that. Shifting gears a little bit, we've kind of talked about leadership as if people who all are already leaders, but what if there's people who are listening to this who have an inkling that like they're really passionate about something? What about the people who want to be a leader or want to make a change in this world, but they have all those fears? And I know for me, that's what I've kind of battled with in stepping out in this way on the internet and, just talking about being highly sensitive. I feel like there were so many fears around showing myself to the world. and such as, being judged and fearing criticism and fearing that people won't like me, because of course I want everyone to like me. And then the other piece was, being misunderstood. So do you have anything that you'd like to share around that?
Yeah, I think something that's really, really key, and it kind of comes back to the thing I said in the very beginning about, it's about leading ourselves really well first. Mm-hmm. And that all really at the crux of that, or at the foundation of leading ourselves really, really well, is trust, right? So it's about looking at the ways that we build trust within ourselves. Because when we trust ourselves, others will trust us. If we don't actually trust ourselves, then others won't trust us either, right? And they sense that energy. And so it's about looking at the ways that we break our own trust. So you mentioned some of that already, like wanting to be liked and the people pleasing and the, really stepping into like perfectionism and second guessing and all the ways that we break trust with ourselves. Procrastinating and second guessing are huge for then not following through on things that you felt really passionate about initially. And once we start like really being true to ourselves, that it's like adding to I like to think of trust as a trust account, right? So the more that we continue to be true to ourselves, the more that we continue to own the unique way that we're wired, the more that we own our sensitivity, that's just all really adding to our trust account. And as that grows, we are able to share what we're passionate about and be true to ourselves. And that energy of trust brings others along to trust us then as a result of that. So I again think, it comes back to that key in leading ourselves well, and the crux of that, at the foundation of that is really, really healthy trust, building our own trust in ourselves, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so beautiful. And this is really everything I share. My biggest intention around everything I do is allowing all highly sensitive people to really own our sensitivity and really see it as a strength and utilize it in the way it's meant to work for us, instead of be shamed by it, pretend that we're not sensitive. It just kills me how much I have put this down for so many years and how people still do it. And, but it's also just, not aware. And so that's why we're doing this. That's why we're here today. We're talking about sensitivity and letting yourself own it and seeing the challenges of why we're not owning it, the insecurities around it, wanting to be liked, stuff like that.
Yeah, not owning it is a way we break trust in ourselves so quickly.
Yes, I love how you say that as well, breaking our own trust with ourselves. And that is the foundation. If there is something that you stand for, Linnell, what is it that you stand for in your life?
Well, for me, what I really stand for is that emotions are a gift that are meant to expand us, to grow us. And it's really important that we embrace our emotions as sort of this language of the universe, spirit, God, whatever language speaks to you, in communicating with us to expand us to our full potential, to really open us up to like all that we can be. And yet I see so much society at large really run from emotions, almost as though there's some negative thing to be like afraid of. And so really the more we become aware of our emotions, we become more emotionally intelligent, and that plays into every aspect of our life and growth, and we just become emotionally resilient. And so really love to see people get healthy emotionally, because it impacts everything. It impacts their social life, their physical health, sleep better. Every aspect of life is impacted by our emotions, and that's really there to serve us, not to be something that we run from, in the same way that our physical body serves us and really moves us to be able to work and do all kinds of things, and the way that our minds allow us to think and to create. Our emotions are meant to, were given to us too, to really serve us. And I really like to see people really step into that and embrace their emotions as a gift.
Yeah, I always like to see, well, the way I always have said it to myself is that emotions is energy in motion. And that, I think that right there just has shifted me in so many ways to not be shameful of my emotions and to be scared of them, but actually be like, oh, and emotion is just energy and it's just moving in my body. So if I just let it move instead of, either try to push it away or make it get stuck and hold on to it, then, and judge it, we hold on to it by judging it, then okay, bring on the emotion, let's get that energy flowing, because we can't create any change in this world unless we have energy and energy flowing, right? That passion, we need the energy every day to get up and do what we need to do and move through the challenges and talk to the people we're going to talk to. It definitely takes energy, but if we let that energy get stuck because of our emotion, we judge it and we're shameful of it, we try to hide from it, push it down, we're not going to have the energy resources that are trying to pass through us. And that's why I really do think that highly sensitive people, because we feel so much, in a way, we are coded and wired to be leaders and to create change. And even Erin would talk, might agree with me around this, that, she's the one that said that highly sensitive people are royal advisors, and we advise in different ways. Maybe it's just very, very in the small ways, but it could be in big ways as well. So however that looks for you, just know that, as someone who feels a lot, there is a lot of intelligence in there, and there is a lot of potential for movement in creating change for sure. And so one other question I had for you, Linnell, is, of course, like we know, okay, emotions are good. I mean, emotions are important. We need to work on it. But I want to know why emotions are important to you. Was there any life experience you could share, or progression of life experiences that brought you to this place where you are right now, to see how valuable and important emotions are?
Yes, and love that you asked that question. So I think junior high is when I really, really fully became aware of my emotions in a really powerful way. I used to get off the bus and come in and talk to my mom, and I'd start crying about kids that had made fun of me. And I just felt it really, really deeply. And then I had a grandfather who committed suicide, and I felt that really deeply. And then like a year later, my best friend and our neighbor, her brother, was killed in a motorcycle accident. And I just felt like I felt everything so, so deeply, and everything within me wanted to outgrow this sensitivity or outgrow this emotionalness. So then I started high school, and things were, much different in high school. I felt positive. And then my senior year happened, and I lost my father in a tragic farm accident. And again, that whole emotional world took me for a ride, and not only felt my own pain of the loss so deeply, but I felt all the emotions and the pain of my mother and my siblings. And it just was way too much. And so I spent a number of years just really trying to numb my emotions, dismiss them, bottle them up. I tried everything under the sun. And, for a long time, work became sort of that addiction, that numbing technique for me. And so I like to say I'm a recovering workaholic, and really came to a place of really embracing my emotions, no longer running from them, and just really seeing what a gift they are. And I think so often I feel like there's so many homes where we're just not really taught how to really just acknowledge our emotions. And in that acknowledging, there's really a dissipating of the energy, right, that charge, that emotional charge that comes with emotions, that can be so incredibly powerful. And yet I don't think that's learned in the average home. And so I think that's why I'm so passionate in my work with highly sensitive, because they are impacting the people who then take it home, right? What they learn in the workplace, and just really acknowledging what they're feeling. And as they learn that skill in the workplace, they can take it home to their home life. You know, they can take it home and they can demonstrate it and model it with their kids. They can model it with their spouse. And I just think that that's so important, because I certainly didn't learn it other than I needed some kind of emotional discharge when I got home from school, and where, you know, the whole crying and it's sort of emoting, or what I like to call sort of vomiting on my mother, wasn't necessarily the healthiest way. And yet there was a release from that, but there's certainly a way to do it. I've since learned in a really healthy way that isn't just sort of dumping on someone, and yet you can feel that release and, as you said, that energy back in motion again. So yeah, it's been my own sort of emotional, tumultuous journey that has really made me really passionate about people being healthy emotionally.
Mm-hmm. And what I really think that we have in common, Linnell, which I'm hearing in your story, is that you are a leader who teaches other people how to be leaders. Yeah. And I think that is the best type of leader, in my opinion, because if we're a leader who thinks that we always have to be on top and we always have to be the best and know the most, then, you know, that's just going to fall apart. You know, every great leader had a team of people who never worked alone, knowing that they had their gifts and skills, but the person right next to them had the other gifts and skills they didn't have.
Yes.
And also to then teach people that, first of all, we have to collaborate. But that also, that if we're going to be in a leadership position, the goal would be to also teach people how to step up and lead themselves. As going back to what you said around, you know, leadership starts with leading ourselves first. So that's what we need to teach and model for the people we're going to be facilitating.
And I think that's you touched on something that I absolutely love. I think that's one of the things I love most about leadership is the collaboration. Love collaboration, right? Yeah. And that really is what leading is about. It's about like getting the best ideas from everyone, because it's certainly not about having it all yourself as a leader, but really knowing how to tap that gifts and strengths of all of the team.
Yeah. And especially for anyone here listening who wants to step up in some way and wants to create a change or really do something based on their passion, kind of similar to what Linnell and I are doing, just know that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to know it all, because I think that really holds people back, right? If you want to be some sort of like health coach, you don't need to know every little thing about health. You just need to know what you're really good at and what you know, your experiences, what you've experienced and what you can then teach from your experience, because you've lived it firsthand. You're your own walking experiment. You're your own walking research experiment. So that right there is one of the best teachers that anyone could learn from, and is why all of us can be teachers, because we all live and we all have experiences.
I love, too, that you said that we don't have to be experts, right? We don't have to know it all to step up and to really start being in the change that we want to see. And I think about pretty much most of my leadership positions have been things that have just sort of fallen in my lap. I've never, ever even thought out and didn't know at all what I was doing when I first started out. And yet you learn as you go, because you use that collaborative approach of the people around you. So yes, I love that you touched on the fact that you don't have to know it all, right? You just need to just take that step.
You learn by being in it. That's why it's called a practice for most people, right? Whether you're a doctor, a coach, or it's a practice. We are creating the path literally as we take the next step.
Right.
Linnell is happy to connect with anyone who feels they're running out of options and looking to dive into the deep transformational work she facilitates. To To connect with Linnell, simply email her at linnell@linnelltrigolette.com, and she'll be in touch with you shortly to schedule a time to connect. Hey, did you know that by simply subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on why it's been valuable, it'll help our show be reached by more people? Consider how you can help create the ripple effect by sharing it with your favorite highly sensitive friend or family member. And if you're someone who feels small but has a big vision, or you're simply confused about where to take your life next, join me at hspleaders.com for a powerful masterclass on how to create your vision and thrive as a highly sensitive person. In this masterclass, you'll learn how to create your vision without feeling blocked with self-doubt, overwhelmed with fear, and stuck in paralyzing confusion. Start living with confidence now by activating your highly sensitive visionary strength so that you can thrive and feel safe in your own skin again. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.